I'm delighted to welcome Las Vegas-based artist Justin Favela to the virtual Berman Museum of Art as part of our celebration of Ursinus College Pride. In 2018 and 19, the Berman Museum hosted two exhibitions of Justin's work, The Valley of Oaxaca and Representing Mexico, Jose Maria Velasquez and the Politics of Paper, which included large-scale installation work and smaller wall pieces, using the artist's dominant medium of collage tissue paper in a style that evokes the piñata. Justin's work, which mixes American pop culture and Latinx experience, has been exhibited nationally and internationally and include commissions at the Denver Art Museum and Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Arkansas. His latest major project, Puente Nuevo, is installed at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art in Fort Worth, Texas. He recently completed a collaboration with Test Site Projects in Las Vegas. He is the recipient of a 2018 Alan Turing LGBTIQ Award for International Artists. He hosts two culture-oriented podcasts, Latinos Who Lunch and the Art People podcast. I am so pleased to welcome you back.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back at the Berman.
Thank you. And I see I'm wearing my Justin Favela t-shirt.
Oh,
the best
yes.
haute couture quarantine wear.
Yes, this is a hand-painted one I did based on some old Chicano paintings that I've seen. So, yes, thank you for wearing this beautiful outfit, the quarantine couture.
Well, it appears that you're sitting in your studio. I was going to ask you what working from home looks like for you.
Well, technically, this is my grandma's house, and she's in Mexico, and she can't really come back right now because it's safer to
Mhm.
be where she is. And so
Mhm.
I just have taken over this is her living room, and I'm making a few projects while I'm here house sitting for her. And so, yeah, my studio is always changing. It's basically wherever I land. So, for about 3 weeks to a month, I think, the Berman Museum was my studio when I was there. So, since I'm an installation artist, most of my work is easier to make on site than to actually
Mhm.
make it ahead of time and then have it shipped and all that. And so, um, I haven't had an official art studio with an address for probably 5 years now because I've been doing so many installations. And so I work from home, my garage, or wherever, my grandma's house.
And how have you been weathering our present conditions in terms of working and living?
Well, it's made me really think about my position as an installation artist, and I've been talking to a lot of my friends about it. It's my work is, on site, very site specific sometimes, and then I have to travel to do this. So a lot of my friends that are like actors or performers, they're like, yeah, you're basically a performer, so you're a touring artist. And so that's really affected my work because I've pretty much had to postpone or cancel everything for the next six
Mm.
months. And so and it so then it really makes me think about my practice and like how I've kind of neglected my studio practice. And so this has given me the time to, I think, reestablish that. So I'm looking forward to setting up a studio in my house, and just thinking about making work differently from now on, just to diversify my income basically, because I already do podcasting, I do installation work, and then my studio practice can be a little bit stronger, I think.
And how do you feel it will change your studio practice or your practice overall?
I think, well, my go-to thing is to make giant things. So thinking smaller,
Mhm.
in scale, not in ideas, of course, or concepts, but in scale. And thinking about my work, and lately I've also enjoyed seeing some of my smaller works in people's homes, And I love taking part in museum exhibitions, don't get me wrong, but I also think it's really special to be able to have an artist's work in your home, and how kind of that changes the entire piece, you know, because a lot of my work is about institutional critique, or you know, about institutional inclusion maybe. And so what does it mean to have my work in your house, right? So that completely
Mhm.
changes what I'm thinking about when I'm making an object or a painting, or so I haven't figured it out yet. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun making those works.
Yeah, that's a very different context.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been kind of turning to my family because I thought it would be fun to like make almost like commissioned work for them. Like, what do you guys want in your house? And just kind of start thinking about art in that sense in a more accessible way. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
The other thing that strikes me about your practice as I've experienced it is the degree to which it's collaborative. That when you were working on your show for the Berman Museum, I was working alongside you, students were working alongside you. It was very dialogic. We were all sort of working as a team, and that's a very different experience than working as a solitary person in your studio.
Yeah, I love working with other people, not only because I like to collaborate, but because it motivates me, honestly. It's been really challenging right now get the motivation to work, like to actually make something, because I don't know, I love social gatherings, and so that really pumps me up when I'm working, you know, um, and then making the installations a little bit more collaborative. Um, when I was at the Berman, you know, the working with the students there, with Teddy, with Danny, Morgan, all of them, you know, they had their very own distinct styles and their very own way of making everything. And I learned from them. So that's also something really fun is I'm there, you're participating, but every time I do an installation, I learn something new, and I love that about art, and collaborate, not even collaborating, but just like working along somebody else, you know. And so yeah, and right now a lot of artists are in their studios or in their homes, and um there's a lot online about like, great, this is the perfect time to, you know, get everything in order and get your ideas out, and you know, and work really hard, so when this is, you know, when this is all over, whatever that means, you know, you'll have a body of work or whatever. But I'm here to tell all those artists, kind of like me, that are not feeling motivated, that it's okay to just like not be productive right now. Because I feel like there's a lot of guilt right now for a lot of artists, especially my friends, that are like, I just don't want to do anything right now because, um, you know, I need to be around people, you know, and so um, not that I haven't enjoyed my time by myself because that the last month has been nice for me, just to be able to reflect and have the time to think about stuff. But it's also detrimental creatively for me in the sense that I'm not physically, I guess, motivated to make anything. I'm just kind of, you know, writing things down and taking things in right now.
Well, there's also something to be said for unpacking that kind of work as part of one's creative practice. That sometimes I think we tend to take for granted the degree to which making those notes, making those sketches, reading those books, having those conversations, just sort of leaning into a different experience of time and space can be really productive for moving one's creative practice forward.
I've been thinking also about like what does it mean to be, for example, I've kind of lost a couple artist residences because of this, and I've been challenged with the task of maybe let's rethink what an artist residency means. What does it mean to be an artist in resident if you're not physically here? So right now, those are things that are kind of circulating in my head because these organizations that I'm working with still want to do something with me, but we just have to completely rethink what kind of this art world system is at the moment, and um, and also um, from like I feel like a lot of artists don't talk about finances and like how to like the business side of the art world.
Mhm.
And something like this has never happened in my lifetime. So a lot of projects, for example, you're paid 50% of the entire honorarium or fee or whatever up front usually, and then you get paid after the thing is done. But I've never thought to ask for or put in a clause in a contract, for example, say like, what happens if there's something crazy like this that happens,
Right.
and I've done all this work, all these proposals, and I still haven't been paid my first installment. What happened? What all that time that I spent is gone, is lost, and I didn't get paid for that. And so now when I just started a new contract with another museum, and that's in there now. There's like a kill clause, like what happens if this project doesn't happen? We'll still pay you for your time. And so it's a whole new framework that we're working under, and I think that's just going to happen with everyone, with every career, with everything globally. We all need to start thinking like nothing's going to go back to normal. We're just going to have to start thinking about our new world that we're in now.
And
Did
I
that
think
answer the question? I don't know.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's absolutely a utility to or a productivity to being forced into rethinking how we do things and how we might do things differently. And
Yeah.
I think that we're all sort of realigning, the ways that we interact and what constitutes a meaningful interaction certainly has been different. Even when I, walk around the neighborhood walking my dog and, the way that people acknowledge each other from across the street is different.
Yeah. And also how to show affection in a different way because we
Mhm.
can't touch each other. That's also something that I've been thinking about. Uh, so the act of making food for somebody and delivering it, leaving it on their porch, or just calling somebody and having a long conversation with them. I can't tell you how many friends that I've never had a phone conversation with. We're on FaceTime every day, which is something that's I think even more intimate than being in a room with somebody because I mean in this like in a group setting because you really have to you really have to talk to each other. You really have to look at each other. So it's definitely I think gonna give us a better appreciation for the arts, be it culinary arts, be it literary arts, because cinema, TV, we're all relying on that for our sanity right now. And then also thinking about uh, the act of giving an object or something, thinking about how that's gonna also affect art and how we think of sculpture and how we think of gifts. And it's interesting to see what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think about just the sort of digital domain, right? That I've been teaching all my classes online. I'm having this conversation with you online. I meet with groups of friends in group chats and happy hours and all kinds of different work colleagues. And how often, when you go out under other circumstances, do you see a table full of people and they're all, staring at their devices and not interacting with each other? And here, now that we're sort of limited to these kinds of interactions, I feel like our attentiveness and our sensitivity to one another has grown in sort of an unpredictable way.
I think so. And I've been really trying hard to limit my screen time, but it's tough because everything is online. Everything is online right now. But I have never, um, I've taken like walks and going outside for granted so many years, you know? So now when I'm feeling like antsy, like, oh yeah, I can just go for a walk, you know? So, but yeah, definitely thinking about the digital world. And I think it's going to be great because right now there's like, very traditional formats in which digital content is delivered to us,
Mhm.
be it YouTube or something, music videos or a production or short, like there's all these formulas already in place. But um, I think artists especially are going to think outside the box when it comes to even like doing artist lectures or presenting their work. So it's also going to be interesting to see how that transfers to the gallery once it is a physical space again. Yeah, and it's been interesting, and I think it's a bigger challenge for bigger organizations like the Berman, like a museum. Like how do you make content that's catered and interesting for the people there? It could also be an opportunity to have a bigger audience. So that's also something cool.
It makes possible a different way of thinking about partnerships.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, something really quick that I think is interesting is uh, for many, I think for a long time, like doing something like this, for example, was just thought of something you kind of just do off the cuff or like in addition to something. So now making this, something important um, and also like creating this opportunity for an artist is also really interesting because I know a lot of museums right now, for example, are actually this is a better example. I'm part of the Fusebox Festival this weekend, and it's usually in Austin, Texas, but they moved it to a virtual edition, right? So all this content that all these artists would technically be putting out for free, the festival is now paying people to make that content, right? So giving value to our time, that's something that people forget is like time is very valuable, and a lot of times artists are not compensated for that.
I mean, time is valuable, and I the way that I've been differently aware of time as a construct since this whole sheltering in place started, it in some ways time has become amorphous. I have to remind myself how many weeks I've been in this house. I sometimes have to look twice in terms of thinking about what day it is. And it is a real reminder of how constructed our notions of time are and the fact that we have an ability to reorient them.
For me, time is flying by. I don't know where the day goes. It's just flying by. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, also kind of restructuring your day. So, I was, because of my schedule, I was used to, my body would naturally get up at like 7-ish a.m. And then I would
Mhm.
kind of force myself to go back to sleep sometimes. But then, and then I'd probably go to bed around midnight or something. And now I'm like, if I wake up before noon, it's a good day. You know what I'm saying? Today is a good day. So I have completely shifted, and I was also feeling guilty for that. Like, oh, I should go for a walk like at 7 a.m., come back, like I already whatever a healthy breakfast, a healthy schedule or routine is. And but then I thought, well, if my body's naturally doing this, and I feel more creative at 2 a.m., well, let's just do that. Let's see what happens, right? So I'm just kind of shifting everything over. And It's gonna get hot here in just a couple months, so
Yeah.
whatever. It's better to be up at night when it's nice and cool. So we'll see.
So I wanted to ask you about the role of translation in your work. There seem to be multiple forms of translation in your work between contemporary art and historical art, between American culture and Latinx culture. Among your experiences in as someone who lives in Las Vegas, but who also has this Mexican and Guatemalan heritage. And I wonder if you can talk about how you perceive translation as working in the work that you make.
I think it's this thing that I've always been interested in, especially as a Guatemalan slash Mexican American. I've always had to code switch, even when I was really little. I recognized from a very early age that, when you're a kid, you don't want to stand out. You just kind of want to blend in sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I would come over to my Mexican side of the family, uh, they would comment on my Guatemalan accent. So I quickly learned to have a Mexican accent with my Mexican family and then go back and have a Guatemalan accent, right? So I learned the skill of code switching very early. And that, I mean, of course, that bled into, maybe that's the wrong word, that went into like also code switching when it comes to expressing queerness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or kind of talking about race. And so it it's always been there. And then when I started to make work about my identity and then started to also translate art historical works into my language, into my medium, that's another thing that I really enjoyed. So there's many levels to it. So the first part I think is um, is kind of talking about my identity in this translation. So what does it mean to be a Latino? What does it mean to be a Latinx person in the United States of Mexican slash Guatemalan heritage, right? Um, and this idea of like, what is Latinidad and what makes me Latino? There's no answer to it. And the more genuine you are, the better, obviously. But like, what is authentic? Like, what is authentic Mexican food? I don't know. Like, food change from town to town in Mexico. Food is different. And so I like kind of calling that out with my work, like how the kind of the ridiculousness and the like exotization of authenticity, and how I think it's more interesting to talk about what's on the surface, because I think that truly reveals what's in there, what's inside. So like, for example, in Las Vegas, everybody calls this place like the fakest place in the US, right? Like, all the casinos have all these facades, and uh, you know, everything is to kind of everything is made to get your attention. And but because of that, everything is accessible, everything is easy to navigate, everything is visible, right? And so what's more important? I go to town sometimes. For example, okay, this is a stretch, but I'm going to say it. When I went to Washington D.C., like, I understand these are all monuments that we should all know, but there's no signage in Washington D.C. So you don't know all the buildings look like Roman buildings, right? So it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
what is this? What is this building? And you have to walk around the whole thing till you finally see it carved in stone at the top somewhere, right? In
Yeah.
Las Vegas, that would never happen. In Las Vegas, it'd be like, look at this gaudy, glittery facade. Here's an entrance, here's an entrance, here's an entrance. And just in case, the name of it is on every corner, every 5 feet. You know what I mean? And so um, it's this it's this accessibility that I'm attracted to. And so thinking about my identity as a Latino is like, on the surface, this is what being Latino means, right? Like, depending on what region of the United States you live in. I live in the Southwest, so the default is Mexican, right? So for a lot of time, a lot of for a long time, my work was about that, was about the challenges of being also Guatemalan, but that identity never being seen. So let me just exploit the fact that I'm a Mexican American, right? And now I've kind of taken a step back and I'm thinking about, okay, well, there's a lot of erasure of Central American Latinos. Uh, I'm gonna really express and celebrate my Guatemalan heritage, and so that's kind of my goal for the next one. But then in the back of my head, I'm also thinking of like Latinidad and how having an umbrella term for everybody that comes from a Latin American country, uh, is that a good thing or is that erasure? You know, um, so I think my work is trying to translate that. And then on the other hand, on the other side of it, visually, my work is also, I think, translating kind of digital imagery.
Hmm.
Most of us, most artists, they don't like to admit it, but we just all go to Google Images and copy shit off of there, right? So it's like it's it's something that we've always done. So why not just highlight that, right? And so if you look at a lot of, for example, the show that I had at the Berman, representing Mexico, Jose Maria Velasco, uh, or representing, I should say, it's if you stand back, it's a pixelated digital image, but it's made out of craft materials, and I love that relationship, like something so two-dimensional, just becoming soft and accessible because of the material.
Yeah, there is a fascinating dialogue in your work that goes on between how we are now sort of trained to see things in pixels and
Uh-huh.
the work that you do, which is really beholden to the hand and, as you said, to craft media. And that juxtaposition, that dialogue, I think, is really fascinating.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how people also love seeing somebody do, somebody doing representational work. That's something that is, no matter what culture you're in, like, look how similar, like, look at this line drawing, it looks just like this thing, right? And so I'm kind of doing that but turning it on its head, because I'm making it even more pixelated when I'm making them into piñatas. But then if you stand back, um, the further back you are, and if you use your phone and you stand back, because the phone actually tries to organize the pixels so you can see it better, you can actually read the painting almost. You can, it almost like makes up information when you take a photograph of it, which is really interesting.
And at the same time, even the panel pieces are take on a kind of relief sculpture aspect to them. They they move as people walk by them. They are sensitive to the air movement and the movement of the viewer. And so there is something really fascinating about that aspect to them.
I like that it responds to the audience, and it's really cool.
In terms of thinking through issues of identity, this year Ursinus College is marking its Pride celebration, which is this time when community comes together at a time when we're forced to be apart. And I wonder if you can reflect on how making art or engaging with art or expression or cultural expression more broadly can be a way of visualizing identity and bringing communities together.
First of all, I think loving yourself is something really difficult to do for a lot of people. And so being being alone right now during these big times, can be really hard. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people are going to, maybe, hopefully, start learning to love themselves and to know that they matter, because I think that is a big deal. But then also kind of giving you, I think, I think during this Pride season, it's going to be interesting to see how people kind of reflect on their own communities, and maybe see, I mean, see it from a different angle, maybe see who is not being represented in these celebrations. And so, and also, I think not having those communities as support uh, and taking those communities for granted, I think will help people kind of refocus and really spend their time and money with organizations and people that they truly love and want to support also. So I think there's many aspects of this that is interesting because um, you know, I don't want to get too like I don't want to get too down in the dumps about it, but it's like one of the reasons why pride is such a big thing is because of capitalism and because of corporations profiting off of, the gay flag and the symbols um behind the movement that a lot of people have died for, and have risked their lives for. So I am actually very interested to see what these big corporations that host parades and big parties, like how are they going to contribute to this?
Well, I thank you for taking time out of your day, your working from home day, to talk to us. Is there anything else that you would like to share with folks at the Berman Museum or Ursinus College before I take my leave and bid you farewell?
I just want to thank everybody. Thank you for having me. And I just want to thank everybody at the Berman and at Ursinus. It was one of the best experiences being there, meeting all of you, working with everybody at the museum. It kind of, after that experience, I don't think any residency has lived up to it. So it definitely it definitely made me feel, um, I think the experience at Ursinus really helped my art career in the sense of knowing how to ask for what I want and what to expect because y'all went above and beyond any other organization. So I just want to tell everybody at Ursinus and in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, to support the Berman Museum because they're doing amazing things.
Well, thank you. And you certainly, the community that you built around you is also indebted to you and the strength of your work and the strength of your personality. And we feel fortunate to have been able to share an orbit with you for, a few months. And it has been such a pleasure to re-engage and to stay in contact.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.